off again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Delighted to be joined, as always, on a Tuesday with Ross Gregory. How are you, mate? Good to see you.
I'm good, Steve. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks yourself. Enjoying the transfer rumours and silly season.
God, plenty of that kicking about, mate. To be honest, and thanks to Sean Casey again for coming on last night and doing the transfer show with me and Joe. I think, it's just nice to put a name to a face. I'd seen him unloaded quite a few times. I've obviously followed him on Twitter, and listen. It's all about your own opinions, you know. We all get tidbits, we all get a little bit of information from different places, and I guess sometimes it's just trying to sort the wheat from the chaff. But plenty was discussed last night on the transfer show, and I guess yesterday's arrival of Dan Ashworth, Ross, is where I'll start with you, and you know, that was something which we've talked about on this platform before, was the worst kept secret in football that Dan Ashworth was coming to Newcastle. It was just a case of, you know, how much it was going to cost and when it was going to happen. But he arrived, finally formally announced, finally, basically accepted by the Premier League. And, the club said that he would be responsible for the club's overarching sporting strategy, football development and recruitment at all age levels, and will work closely with the head coach, Eddie Howe, academy manager, Steve Harper, and the head of recruitment, Steve Nixon. And Ashworth, I did say this last night, but I will repeat it, said, Newcastle United is an incredible football club, and I'm delighted to be joining at this very exciting time. Each time I've been to St James's Park in the past, I've been reminded of the club's long history and the unrivaled passion of its fan base. It's a huge football club with great potential, and I'm incredibly positive about what we can collectively achieve. I'm excited to start work immediately and look forward to being part of a team that is helping the club to grow and achieve long-term success. So, great news. He's here. Premier League haven't knocked that on the head. It went through quicker than the takeover, Ross. But yeah, we've said it before. I think it's a good appointment, and let the work begin.
Absolutely, I think it's as good an appointment in that role that the club could have made. You know, I've said before, but in football circles, he's very, very highly regarded, very experienced, worked in the Premier League, but also with the FA, got a lot of contacts, got a lot of knowledge. It is a fantastic appointment. I don't think there's it's a little, I suppose it's a little bit like transfers. You know, you can bring somebody in, and it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be the right fit, or they're going to be a huge success. But I think you've got to kind of minimise the risk, and you've got to try and get the best people in as you possibly can for the key roles. And Dan Ashworth is as close to a kind of knock and bet that he's going to be a success in that role. Newcastle needed a little bit of kind of football expertise on that side of things, on the board. You know, Amanda Staveley and co are doing a fantastic job, but you need people with real kind of football knowledge, football understanding, an awareness of the strategy and how to build a club and move that club onto the next level. So I think Dan Ashworth is the right person to do that role. It won't be purely about recruitment. It won't be purely about transfers and coming in and getting big name players in that's part of his remit, undoubtedly, is the recruitment side of things, working with Steve Nixon, as you've touched on there with the statement. But it's bigger, it's a wider remit that it's looking at the whole kind of sport and football philosophy around the club in general. So really exciting appointment. I think it's something that is long overdue at Newcastle in that role. All the top clubs have got these key people in a kind of director of football, sporting director, whatever you want to call the role. They've got key men, key people in those roles who can use their contacts, use their experience to drive the club forward. And I think it's going to be a real positive move for Newcastle over the next few years.
What do you think that Dan Ashworth will bring that's different to people who've been, in that job previously at Newcastle? I mean, for years, it was quite basic. You had the likes of, Russell Cushion, who was in charge of Newcastle United's affairs. But then, moving forward, we had obviously under Douglas Hall and Freddie Shepherd, we had people like Freddie Fletcher. We had David Stonehouse. George Forbes. Just picking names out of the air at the minute. Then under Ashley, we had the much hailed Chris Mort, who wasn't here long enough, I think, for many of us, and then Derek Lambias. So it's a slightly different role, but it's somebody who's been brought in, to do a specific role. What is he going to bring that's different?
I think it's pure kind of football knowledge. He's not going to be necessarily focusing on the business side of things. He's not necessarily going to be focusing on transfers or anything particular. It's the whole kind of strategy and philosophy, and I know those kind of words are a little bit wishy-washy at times. You can talk of strategy and philosophy and ethos and all this sort of stuff, but you need somebody at the top with a very, very clear vision of how the club should be run, and that's not just the first team. I think it's the club as a whole. It's working through the academy. It's working through recruitment. Having somebody who can link all that together. And Dan Ashworth's got fantastic experience through, like I said, through his time at the FA, wherever else he's been over the years. Whether it's been with the FA or with Brighton. He's obviously had a spell at West Brom as well. He's got fantastic knowledge of football clubs and how they need to be built from the academy all the way up through to the first team. A lot of work that he did at the FA kind of set the precedent for with Gareth Southgate going in. But those youth teams that came through the ranks, those under 17s and under 20s teams, the kind of the England DNA and the coaching DNA. So he look at the whole structure of the club. He won't just be focused on admin, or he won't just be focused on the first team or transfers. He won't just be focused on the academy. He'll be focused on the club as a whole, and bringing that experience that he's got at different clubs and at the FA into Newcastle United. And like I say, I think it's a really fantastic appointment.
Yeah, definitely is. We will wait and see, what happens. I don't think we'll hear a great deal from him. I certainly think now that we've had his announcement, now that we've had a few words of him, I've watched at Brighton over the months as well. Before there was an actual move for him, he doesn't see a great deal. So I don't expect we'll hear much from him. I think we'll just see actions rather than words. I'm going to chuck this one at you, Ross. I know you were watching the transfer show last night. A lot of activity on social media about this guy, Gareth Bale. Of course, he's in the news for all the right reasons. Scored the goal for his country, which has taken him through to a World Cup final. This guy's on ludicrous money, at his club where he's now leaving. He's looking for a club. Rumours abound that he was on Tyneside having discussions. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But it's an exciting one. It's a marquee signing. It's something that people like Mitch and Stu Penman, who live in the Middle East, have said that the Saudis would certainly love to have a marquee signing, somebody that could hang their coat on, somebody that people would get emblazoned across the back of replica shirts. So is this something which A, would excite you, and B, do you think it's credible?
I suppose I'll answer those in reverse order. Credible, possibly. He's obviously available. He's someone who fits the bill in some ways for Newcastle. But having said that, I don't think he fits the bill in a lot of other ways. I don't think he'd necessarily be a Eddie Howe type of signing, somebody who would fit in. Would it excite me? No, it wouldn't. If I'm being brutally honest, I think Gareth Bale is been a fantastic player. Is played at a level way beyond. A lot of players who've pulled on a Newcastle United shirt in the past and who will in the future. What he's achieved in his career is phenomenal. But he's past his best for me. He's one of those players who's, I think, he's not in love with football, and he's not necessarily in love with building a new project or a new club, which is what Newcastle need. They need people who are hungry, who are determined, who've got that desire to play for the next 3-4 years and help take Newcastle onto the next level. I think, like I said, Gareth Bale's a fantastic player, but for me, he's on the way down. He's not the player that he was. He's injury prone. He's injury hit. He's on huge money. He doesn't love the game. I can quite easily see him playing another 6 months and then calling it a day after the World Cup, getting a short-term contract somewhere. You could say, well, should he get that short-term contract at Newcastle and the kind of you scratch our back, we scratch yours. He does a job for Newcastle and in the meantime gets himself fit for the World Cup. Not for me. I would be steering well clear of players like Gareth Bale and others whose best days are behind them, who are on the way down from their career. I want to see hungry, talented, young, ambitious players who've got their career ahead of them, who can come into Newcastle and help drive the team forward. That's my personal opinion. I know others will disagree, and it would be fairly exciting in that sense, but I think Newcastle have got to move on from those Michael Owen type of signings or those Gareth Bale type of signings now.
Okay, moving on to Dean Henderson. Luke Edwards, of course, reported yesterday that the deal was dead. Other journalists are coming out with the polar opposite of that, saying that it's still very much on. I mean, this is what we're going to see. A lot of journalists have different sources and obviously come out with with polar opposite stories. But Dean Henderson, any whispers at the your headquarters about this Henderson deal? Is it still on, or is it dead in the water like Luke Edwards is put out yesterday?
Luke, like you say, Luke will have his sources and his contacts, and other journalists have theirs. From my side of things, I've not heard too much more on Henderson over the last week or so. There was definitely contact and there was definitely interest. I suppose, and I think Newcastle do like Dean Henderson. The way I look at it, Steve, is, and we've talked about this before on the show, it's priorities around Newcastle. Now, is goalkeeper a priority? I don't think it's at the top of the priority list. I think there's, the need a centre half, need a left back, need forwards, and that's where the bulk of the transfer budget will be spent. But transfers are complicated beasts, and it's not very straightforward with it. And if you've got a pot of money and you've got to prioritize that pot of money, it's like me with this house. Okay, I've got a damp patch in the kitchen. I need a new TV. I need a new me tumble dryers on the blink. And our lass is asking us to get a shed for the garden as well, so we can do all that. Now, I've only got a certain amount of money, and I cannot do this. What's the priorities? Well, the damp patch is the priority, so we'll get that sorted first. TV I can maybe get away with over the summer. I'd like I can the shed. I'm just going to borrow my father-in-law's garage to store all our stuff in. It's like a loan deal. I'm going to loan his garage. It's where your priorities are. The priority, the money has got to be spent in certain areas first and foremost. And if you've got a little bit left over, or if something else comes around, then you can do it. And I see that with the Henderson's thing. I do think they will look to get a goalkeeper in the next 12 months, but it might not be this summer. It might not be Dean Henderson this summer. It might be that come the end of the summer, and nobody else has made any bids, he might be available on a loan deal in the summer at the end of the transfer window. I think that's a real possibility that there could still be something on loan. But at the minute, it's probably not at the top of the priority list, which is why there's been a little bit of cooling in the interest, or a little bit of cooling in the talks. But there's definitely been interest there. That's for certain.
The other name on everyone's lips at the moment, Ross, of course, is Hugo Ekitike, and this one certainly built up pace over the last week since we last spoke. Again, Craig Hope on his timeline was very positive at the start of last week. Midweek he was a little bit reticent. Seemed to be maybe something stalling. Back end of the week seemed to be a popular news story that he was almost done, and he was going to come to Newcastle. you know, again, this one is one that excites the fans. And you talk about priority positions. That is the priority position, and they've got to get that right. So I think Newcastle fans, if that player comes in, would be very happy, I think.
Oh yeah. That's absolutely the top end of the priority list for me is those forward positions, getting in players with that extra quality in the final third, whether it be wide forwards as we've talked about, or a kind of a centre forward through the middle, somebody who you can hang your hat on for 20 goals a season. They're the real priorities for Newcastle, and that's where they've got to focus their attention. They've got to get those players and that's where the vast majority of the budget will probably go as well, the transfer budget, because as we all know, that's where you have to pay that little bit of premium. You have to pay that extra few quid to get top players in. It's again with transfers, it's how the deal's structured. So with Ekitike and his club Reims in France, that it was how the deal was being structured, which was initially one of the stumbling blocks. They needed to get the payment structure and everything right first and foremost. After that, it's now obviously convincing the lad himself to whether he wants to come to Tyneside or not, whether it's right for this point in his career, whether it's the personal terms and everything else can be met. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying before. Transfers are really, really difficult to nail down. There's so many moving parts with a transfer. You've got to get all these elements of it absolutely spot on. So, and I don't blame the lad for maybe not being 100% certain if he wants to come yet. He's a 19-year-old kid. He's got his whole career ahead of him. He's very young. If I was 19 moving to a different country, I'd have to give myself a few thoughts as to whether it's something I want to do at this point in my life. So hopefully they can get that one done. I do think it's very, very close. And if they can get that one, to use a phrase, over the line, then it'll give everybody a massive boost. I don't think there's any real need to panic on transfers yet, but it'd be really good to see that first one done and completed this summer, and hopefully get some extra quality in that final third.
Keep your questions coming in. We'll come to them in the second half of the show. The other name on the radar this week has been Nathan Aki, and obviously, we are in the market. We know that for another centre half. Sven Botman, of course, is another name which has been linked, but this is a new one. There's a tenuous link there, of course, with Eddie Howe, a player which he clearly enjoyed working with at Bournemouth, and someone who he got through the ranks and helped make him the player he was. Is a reunion something that you would like to see? I feel he's slightly overpriced, mind, at 50 million.
I think he's overpriced at 50 million. I agree with you, Steve. But that's the kind of the going rate these days, isn't it? It's a tricky one. I think what City signed him for 40 million from Bournemouth, which was a lot of money as well. But that seems to be the going rate these days for centre halves. I don't think he's worth 50 million, if I'm being honest. I don't really think he's worth 40 million, but that's the price on the ticket. I think that kind of money would probably rule Newcastle out a little bit, because he's, I think paying 50 million or 40 million for a Botman is maybe a little bit more understandable. They can see that Botman could become one of the top centre halves in the world, and he's, Ake is not old, but by any stretch of the imagination, but Botman's got a few years on him. All that having been said as well, I just don't see Nathan Ake coming to Newcastle, even if Newcastle offered the 50 million from him. I just don't see that one. I don't see him leaving City, particularly this season. Or if he does leave City, is he going to want to go from somewhere where he's won the Premier League title the last couple of years, got to a Champions League semi-final, played 30 games for City. He's not been a regular, but he still played pushing 30 games for them this season. Is he going to want to then drop that far down into a team pushing for the top 8, top 10, or is he going to want to retain European football? Is he going to want to stay in a top 4, top 6, established top 4, top 6 club? that's the problem that Newcastle have got with some of these transfer targets. It's not just matching the money and the salaries and everything else like that, but it's then persuading them to come to Newcastle for that project. And you may get that with Ake because he's worked with Eddie Howe before, and he might buy into that. But I'd be surprised if that one came off.
Yeah, it's again, a lot of it's paper talk, Ross, isn't it? And I think, the point that we made last night on the transfer show was that, agents can be quite mischievous during this period and pushing their players, forward for potential moves using social media, which has become, a lot of people's go-to for transfer news now, using social media to try and, hot deals up, or, if they've got a potential, move to say one club, then they'll ramp it up on social media that he's interested in going somewhere else, and they use supporters' emotions and social media to get their player a better deal. Absolutely.
Look, I've been involved in kind of the media for 20 odd years now, give or take. And the transfer window is always a difficult one for journalists. It's a great one. It's full of excitement. It's full of news. It's busy. And some journalists really, really love it and thrive on it. Others don't, because they know it's such a difficult period to navigate, because you're right, you'll get agents who are punting their players, and they'll do it either via the media, or they'll do it via different clubs or whatever. You can quite easily as a journalist get a call from an agent saying, look, player X, my player, we've heard that this club, Newcastle, Sunderland, Man United, whoever it is, are sniffing around them, are interested in them, just to let you know. And you've got to then, as a journalist, you've got to weigh up whether A, that's true, and can you get a second source? Can you get it double checked out with a club or with somebody else? Or B, is it just the agent who's trying to generate a little bit of interest in his player, so he can get his name out there, so he can try and get another deal or another contract or whatever. But then also C, it's often somewhere in between. So as a club, let's obviously take Newcastle. Okay, looking for a centre half, they won't just have one target for centre half. They won't just have two targets. They'll have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 targets who they are either speaking to off the side, who they're either keeping tabs on, who they've scouted, or who they're interested in, and that'll work its way down. They'll work their way down that list. So you've got to keep these as a club. You've got to keep the pot bubbling and boiling with a certain amount of players, because if you don't get the first one, you've got to be in a good position to maybe bring in the second choice or the third choice. And I'll use a little bit of an analogy with this one. So I'm involved with Wycombe Football Club in the Northern League on a grassroots level, and I'm not comparing. Before we start, I'm not comparing what Wycombe do to what Newcastle United do, because it's apples and oranges. But we've just signed a goalkeeper, Nathan Harker, who used to be Newcastle's under-23s goalkeeper. So we've just signed Nathan Harker this week because we needed a new goalkeeper. We needed a new goalkeeper because our goalkeeper from last season was on loan, and we weren't sure if he was going to come back. And then our manager was trying to speak to him, knew that he might lose him. He's trying to speak to 2 or 3 or 4 different goalkeepers because he doesn't know which one wants to come. He doesn't know which deal he's going to be able to get done. So all of a sudden he's speaking to 3 or 4 or 5 goalkeepers about deals, about which one he can get done, about what kind of terms and offers he can offer, whether those terms and offers meet or fit in with the budget that we have at Wycombe. And it's similar on a different level with Newcastle. They're going to have a budget, and they're going to be speaking to 3 or 4 different centre halves. Can they get this one over the line? If not, can they get this one for this budget? How does it fit in with the rest of the budget? There's so many moving parts to a deal that you might see a Newcastle link with 5 or 6 or 7 different centre halves, or different defenders or different players in a position. There probably is some truth in all 7 of those, but just to varying different levels, because you can't just put all your eggs into one basket. You've got to be speaking to others, just in case a deal falls through, just in case the budget doesn't work, just in case something else happens and a club fall comes in at the last minute, and you've got other options that you can go to. It's such a difficult time for clubs. It's a really interesting one for the media to cover as well, because you've got to try and cover all bases as well. But it does create a lot of speculation, rumour, and I can see why fans get a little bit frustrated with it when they go, "Oh, well, that's a load of rubbish." You know what we're being linked with him for. There may be sometimes it is just a kind of an agent drumming up a little bit of interest, but there is also occasions where there is an element of truth behind it, but it's just how concrete it is.
Yeah, it's amazing really to think that the transfer window causes so many rumours and half truths, but I think a lot of it is down to that. But that's a great insight into how it works at non-league clubs, mate. So thanks for that. As always, we'll have to give a shout out to our sponsors. It's a big shout out and thank you to Spider Miner. Worldwide coverage from the lads, the only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks, lads. Thanks also to skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 01913897245, and the Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Walls and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. And thanks to Cleekai, meet the new Game Over screen. Drop into a CleeRun device near you, available on Apple Store, Google Play, and cleerun.game. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. If you want to join the channel, it's cheap. Just click join underneath, and that does help us towards the running costs of the channel. And if you want a membership pack and entry into the monthly draw, then go to nufcmatters.com and search for membership, or put your smartphone over the QR code and it takes you straight to the membership pack side of things. What do you get for your money? You get a cup, a pen, a membership card and a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw. And this month's monthly draw is for a season ticket or the cash equivalent of £1,000. If you're a subscriber, we'll give you something for nothing. Simply email John at nufcmatters.com and he will send you your car sticker. And please remember, we do support the food bank on this channel, NUFC fans. Foodbank.co.uk is the matchday bucket. It's virtual. You can make a virtual donation 365 days of the year. And it's very important, whilst there's no football on at St James's Park, that people continue to support the food bank. We have got our end of season due coming up as well on Friday, the 24th of June at Shearer's Bar. Tickets are £12 and VIP £15 for an evening with Mick Lowes and Andy Griffin. Andy was on the show at the weekend. Great little interview with Mick, just a sign of things to come on the 24th. So if you haven't got your tickets already, get them. They are selling fast. Tickets are £12 from nufcmatters.com. And only 10 tickets left now for the Shearer Ball. So this will be drawn on Friday, $2.99 a ticket. And it's a wonderful ball, fantastic, signed by Alan Shearer at the event on the 7th of April. Get your tickets now and we will draw that on Friday. Okay, as promised, we're going to go to the chat now and see what questions you have got for us. Tom Dixon was first in. We'll give him the honour. It's the Premier League fixtures will be released next week. Who would you like to see us play first game of the season? Well, Tom, I'll answer that one first. Anybody at home, preferably one of the big guns. I'd like to have either Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, or Man United at home on the first game of the season, because I always feel if you can play one of them right at the start, you can catch them a little bit off guard. So I'd like one of the big teams. What about you, Ross?
Yeah, I'll go with that, Steve. Yeah, a home game at St James's, first game of the season against one of the big boys. Just whets the appetite, gets the pulses racing right from the start. So yeah, I'll go along with that one as well.
Yeah, okay. Let us know who you want, Tom. And Tom also says, any news on Ekitike? No, I will cover it right at the start of the programme, Tom, but thanks for your question. Jimmy Watt says, what do you think about the rumours that Dean Henderson's attitude isn't as good as it could be? It's going to play a big part, isn't it? I've not heard the rumours, Jimmy. I've got to be perfectly honest. But, Ross, that's the kind of thing we've seen with Eddie Howe. You touched on it a little bit earlier as well. He does his homework, and the players have got to fit on and off the pitch.
They do. They absolutely do. You know, you've got to marry it up with you want the best players and you want good players in, and you need a mix in the change rooms as well. You can't have everybody who's up there. You know, you don't want all yes men. You need a little bit of spark. You know, for those of us who've even played Sunday morning football or whatever. You know, you've got different characters in a changing room, in a dressing room, and that's really important to the mix. In terms of Henderson, I haven't read anything in particular about his attitude, but I do know that he's very confident and that he's got a bit of an ego. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing because all good players do have an ego, but he's confident in his ability. He knows where he wants to be. He's got a belief in the levels that he should be playing at, and whether he thinks he should be England number one or Man United number one or whatever. I don't necessarily think it's a bad attitude to have. You want players who are ambitious and who are confident and whatever. But yeah, Eddie Howe will obviously assess every player in terms of their attitude and what they bring to the club off the pitch and in the change rooms as much as what they bring on the pitch.
Yeah, it's a big thing for Newcastle, that, and it's great to see that our club and Eddie Howe taking a lot of care on that. John Askew says, would Diaby be a good signing? I think another decent wide player would be a good signing.
Yeah, I don't know much about Diaby personally, if I'm being honest, but I do think we've said that they need to bring wide players in, attacking threat from our wide players who not only create but score goals. I think is important. You've got to spread that goal threat around. You look at the best teams in certainly in the Premier League. You know, Man City and Liverpool is the obvious two, but also maybe your Chelsea's and elsewhere. They've got goal threats from different positions. They don't just rely on one man through the middle. You've got the wide players who'll chip in, or you'll get the odd goals from midfield as well. So I think getting another wide attacker in, whether it's a winger or whether it's a wide forward, and there's a bit of a difference, I think is really important this summer.
Yeah, definitely agree with that as well. What's your thoughts on Ashworth mentioning a reduction in the senior pros by about 20 to 30%, says Jack Sparrow. I just think this will be a chunk of the positive dressing room vibes from last season. I mean, you know, you're looking at the names who could potentially come into that kind of remit. You're looking at your Shelvies, you're looking at your Richies, possibly Lascelles. He's getting on a bit. But I mean, you're looking at slightly older players. Kieran Clark, as I've already said on this programme, I think that deal's already done. It was done a few weeks ago, and he's on his way out. But yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure that it will affect the chunk of the positive dressing room. These players have to be moved on. Dwight Gale, another one.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge for Newcastle this summer. Is how they can not just bring players in, but how they can get players shipped out who aren't in the plans, but who are still on very, very good money, or still got a couple of 3 years left on the contracts in some cases. It's going to be a tricky one, and I can see a lot of late kind of loan deals potentially at the end of the transfer window, where Newcastle end up just having to bite the bullet and pay a good chunk of somebody's wages still, because getting somebody like a Dwight Gale who'll be on very good money to go elsewhere, whether it's another Premier League club or more likely a Championship club, they're not going to be able to afford the wages. He's not going to want to take a pay cut. So, and why should he? He's been offered a contract, and he's signed the contract that he's on. So you can see Newcastle having to pay 50% of wages or salaries, or 10% or 30% or whatever it is, just to try to get players out the door. But there does need to be a reduction in the squad. There does need to be a good number of players who are moved out and moved on to new clubs, whether it's your Haydens or your Richies or Kieran Clarks or Lascelles, or you've still got your Jeff Hendricks and various others who are in and around the club. There's going to have to be a bit of not a fire sale, but there's going to have to be a little bit of wheeling and dealing this summer.
Christ, I always forget about Hendrick, you know what I mean? I think it's because he wasn't here last season, and you genuinely forget that he's a Newcastle player, but he is still on the books, which is crazy. John Askew says, Ross, do you think the top six will be okay about selling players to us? They might be helping with our project. I mean, there was that feeling when Newcastle were first taken over that the big six wouldn't do business with us at all, and I think that was that kind of feeling was enhanced over the Lingard situation in January, where it appeared it was a done deal, and then it looked as if Manchester United pulled the rug from beneath our feet.
I think there'll always be an element of that. There'll always be a little bit of looking at Newcastle as a potential threat to the top six over the next few years, depending on how the progress is made. Ultimately, I think though money talks, and if Newcastle come in and offered in Man City wanted 50 million for Nathan Ake and Newcastle offered 50 million for Nathan Ake, then I think money talks at the end of the day. I don't think the top six are. I think a lot of the top six have got their own worries on transfers and recruitments to be concerned about without looking at Newcastle and thinking, we can't sell this to that player or that to the other player. But at the same time, I think you have to look at the top six. Or if I was Newcastle, I'd be looking at the top six as well and saying, do we need to sell? Do we need to buy, a player from Man United? If he's not getting in Man United's team, or he's not getting in Chelsea's team, or is that the sort of players that we should be looking to recruit? Is kind of the top six, not rejects, but you know what I mean, the top six players who can't get their game there. So it'll be interesting, but there might be a bit of a Newcastle premium put on players, but ultimately money talks.
Big shout out to Cumbrian Truth, who was live in the chat as well. He was live earlier on. Give him a sub. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's asking, is Dean Henderson going to Newcastle? We touched on that earlier, Ash. We still think it's possible. It's not a priority position, but I want to touch on this one because I know you're keen on the answer to this. St. Maximum at Tottenham. He's a Tottenham fan, is Ash, and he'd like to see St. Maximin go down there. £40 million was the price that was mentioned, Ross, in the press yesterday. Is that enough to tempt Newcastle to let go of the French winger, or playmaker, maverick, whatever you want to call him?
I think that they will entertain kind of bids. If the money's big enough, I wouldn't be surprised to see St. Maximin moving on somewhere else. Again, is it a priority for Newcastle to sell this summer, or is it one that might work further down the line? I've said before on this show that if it was me, I'd be looking at probably if the money was right, it moving St. Maximin on, because I just don't. I'm not sure he 100% fits in with the style of play that Eddie Howe wants, but is it a priority? I don't think it is. And would you want to sell to Tottenham at this point in time? I don't know. There's all sorts of talk about release clauses and everything else as well, though, Steve. So it might be one that's taken out of Newcastle's hands. So if St. Maximin's a Newcastle player on the first game of the season, I wouldn't be surprised. If he was at a different club on the first game of the season, I wouldn't be surprised either.
I'll be honest, I saw in those last two games against Arsenal at home and Burnley away, I saw a different ASM. I saw somebody who had listened to what the coach had said. And I personally think that, I personally think he'll stay. I think if the money was stupid, I think if somebody came, look, we're talking Man City saying that, Nathan Ake's worth 50 million. Well, if that's the case, then you could slap 75, 80 million pound on ASM's head. A lot of teams would play it, and I think if that's a game that other teams are going to play with us, Ross, then that's the game that we'll play with other people.
Yeah, we're not we're a club now that doesn't need to sell, doesn't need to sell its better players, doesn't need the money as such. You know, it's one of them where why would you want to sell somebody for under the market value or for a cheaper price? I agree. I think his performance against in the last couple of games were much improved. Can he build on that in the summer and in the next season? I think he probably can. And Eddie Howe will want to see if he can do that. And if it doesn't quite happen, then I think Newcastle, look, they're not going to lose money on ESM. You know, signing for what, 16 million, 20 million a couple of seasons ago. They'll certainly be able to at least double their money if and when they do decide to sell him. But yeah, like I say, I wouldn't be surprised if he was still here at the start of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, you know, and I think we'll see a different ASM next season. Eddie Howe has got the pre-season. He's got the close season, the pre-season to work with this guy now, and, you know, work with the other players and hopefully bring in these new signings as well to bed them in early. It'll be great. Hatchet Harry says, should you go in for Eriksen and Tony? Sean Casey last night was the first person I've had on this platform who says we should go for Tony, we should sign him. Eriksen is another one which we're being heavily linked with. You know, it's suggested that he would leave Brentford and come to somewhere like Newcastle now that he's proved, you know, that he's still more than capable of playing at this level. What about those two names?
Eriksen, for me, yes, I would snap him up in a heartbeat. Tony, not for me. I think there's better options for the money that you'd have to pay. Eriksen's just, you know, the way he's come back from his problems has been superb. He was excellent for Brentford once he signed for them in January. So I think he's a really good option, or certainly on a free transfer. Tony, like I say, I just think that there's better options there. I would be looking at somebody like, you know, I know he's been linked quite heavily and I like him a lot, is someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I'd prefer him over Tony. I just think there's better options than Ivan Tony.
Big links for him as well this week. You've touched on him, so we'll talk about him. Again, talks that in the press and on social media that he's had a preliminary chat with Newcastle, and I've got to be honest. I know people say he's injury prone. He's like Callum Wilson, but if we can get him in and have him playing the way he was the season before last, wow, what a talent! I don't think I can remember anybody since the days of Gary Speed and Les Ferdinand who can get up and head a ball as well as he can. Oh,
he's phenomenal in the air. His ability and his potential is there for everyone to see. You have to keep him. You have to keep him fit as you do with a lot of other players. But he's a young man. He's got potentially 10, 15 years still in the game. He's that level for me, Steve. He's that level that Newcastle probably need to be looking at. He's not going to probably go to a top 6 club if he leaves Everton. Is he going to get? You know, City wouldn't look at him. Liverpool wouldn't look at him. Man United might, but Spurs might as a backup to Harry Kane, but he's not gonna get in any of those teams really. Maybe he's Arsenal, but that's the next level of striker for me. Is that player who's just below that kind of top 6, top level. England international, young, loads of potential. I think he's a fantastic player if you can get him fit, and if we could get him at a half decent price, I'd love to see him at St James's.
Porsche Street Henderson says, morning guys, can you explain why Dan Ashworth, a person who's held a major senior position in the FA with England through various levels, should have suffered yet more procrastination? Great question. Answers on a postcard, Porsche Street, to be honest. It's because it's Newcastle United, Ross. We've got that kind of paranoia complex, Newcastle fans, haven't we? I think we've always felt there's this north-south divide, and we're always, they're always picking on Newcastle. But it did seem a bit weird that the Premier League had to do due diligence on them coming in.
Yeah, no, I don't know the ins and outs of the FA rules and regulations. I think we can get a little bit sucked into the paranoia and what the everyone's against Newcastle. Let's just celebrate that Dan Ashworth's in the building, that he's finally started working, and he's going to hopefully take the club on to the next level. Let's look forward and not necessarily look back.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's just, accentuate the positives and not the negatives. Get Joe Gomez from Liverpool, says Hatchet Harry. Another one on Dan Ashworth. He's topical, obviously, this week. Would Ashworth look at Brighton players such as Sanchez, Lamptey, Basuma, Trossard? I'd chuck Caracello, if that's how you see it, into the mix as well, to be honest. And I'd say with his connections with Brighton are probably putting on their tin hats and expecting some kind of raid, Ross.
Yeah, more than likely. Look, he's the job that he's obviously done at Brighton alongside Graham Potter, who anybody who follows me on social media knows that I'm a big Graham Potter fan as well. The way he sets his teams up and the way he coaches and the way he improves players. The job that they've done there is been fantastic, and they've recruited really well. They've brought players in. They have spent a little bit of money, don't get us wrong, but they've brought players in and at a good age and at a good level, and it almost a kind of decent model for Newcastle to follow. They've got some fantastic players there, and obviously what they've done with Dan Burn in terms of improving him, taking him into Brighton and improving him, and now Newcastle are reaping the benefits of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are looking at Brighton for a couple of players, but those players that you mentioned, Basumas and Lampteys and the likes, are going to cost a heck of a lot of money as well.
Yeah, Tom Dixon says, would you go for Harry Winks? I think he'd be a great signing for Newcastle. Again, somebody we're linked with in the January window. Not sure. It tickles me, that one.
Yeah, I've never been sure about Harry Winks. I've not really seen enough of him, to be honest. He's obviously been in and around the England squad, but can't quite get in. He's been in and around. He's not a guaranteed starter at Spurs. He seems to come in and go out. So I've not seen enough of him, but I suppose I'd be thinking, well, is he better than what Newcastle have got? Is it a priority position, kind of that midfield holding, midfield kind of playmaker type of role? Probably not. It's an interesting one, Harry Winks, because he just doesn't seem to have kicked on his career. He just seems to have stalled a little bit, and there must be a reason why, but I don't know, because I've not seen enough of him.
Yeah, Jack Sparrow, I think, answered this when I did my review with Holly at the weekend about what was your favourite on-field moment of last season, but it was certainly Kieran Trippier's free kicks. Just being able to watch somebody of his calibre in a black and white shirt doing what Liam O'Brien, Kevin Sheedy, Scott Sellers has done. And I don't mean score against the Mackems. I just mean, just hitting a free kick with such precision and perfection, and knowing that when you get a free kick now, you've got a chance of it going in. His two free kicks for me were really, really special. Ross, have you got a favourite on-field moment of last season?
There was a few in that second half, wasn't there? There was Bruno's last second winner against Leicester. I thought was a fantastic moment. Equally, if we're talking goals, Callum Wilson's goal against Spurs in the second minute, when the crowd was absolutely on a high after the takeover, and in that first 10-15 minutes, with Callum Wilson scoring very, very early on, was a fantastic moment. There's been a few, not necessarily first team related, but seeing Newcastle women on the St James's Park pitch before the end of the season, playing a game there, and seeing the amount of young fans in the crowd watching it, and that kind of that community feel to it would be something which you hope can be replicated in the future as well. So lots of positivity on and off the pitch in that, certainly from January onwards.
Yeah, definitely. Do Newcastle need to build the defence, says Cumbrian Truth? We've heard a lot about, obviously, goalkeeping situation, talked about it today, but we know there'll be players going out. I guess we need to see who leaves before we decide where we're strengthened. It's not a priority though, is it? We've got enough good defenders at the club. If the Botman deal didn't come off, or Newcastle, didn't go and spend stupid money on Nathan Aki, then I wouldn't be panicking if we hadn't signed somebody by the time we kick off in August.
No, I think the interesting one is going to be the left back situation. We've talked about, obviously, Matt Targett, what happens with him, and Jamal Lewis is going to be hopefully fit for pre-season. Is he going to get another go? Paul Dummett's obviously signed a 1-year extension, but I don't see him being, unless he something changes, but I don't really see him being a kind of first choice, playing 30, 40 games. So I think probably the left back situation is the interesting one for me. I do think that they probably need to strengthen that area unless Jamal Lewis comes back to pre-season and looks fit and firing and looks like a player that we hoped he was going to be when he initially signed. So right back's fine, obviously well stocked there with Trippier and Kraft and Manquillo. The centre half, they'll definitely bring a centre half in this summer. Definitely bring one in, but yeah, the priority for me would be the top end.
Yeah, and I think we're all the same. We all want to see somebody who can come in and score goals. Another one coming in there from John Spence. He says, someone at work this morning was saying they're finding it difficult to increase capacity at Newcastle. Do you think it's time for a new ground?
I would like to explore, personally, every possible avenue, every possible option with St. James's before going to look at a new ground. I'm a traditionalist. I love St. James's Park. I love the location. I love the history of it. I would hate to see, all of a sudden, Newcastle playing in a different venue, in a different ground somewhere else. Even if it was, a fantastic, stadium within the city limits or wherever, or still quite centrally located. I would personally want to explore every possible opportunity, every possible avenue of extending St. James's, whether it's turning it on its side, whether it's buying some more land or doing something with something clever with the stands. I know you have, I think Steve as well. I've spoken to people with an architectural background and who've looked at plans and looked at possibilities and everything else like that. I do think there's probably something that can be done at St. James's, and I don't think it needs to be. I don't think we need to be talking like an 80,000-90,000 seater stadium. I think it's 52,000 at the minute. Even if we could put another 15,000 on it somewhere, maybe get it up to 65. I think that would probably be just about enough. But if it has to move and the club has to move for the sake of progress and everything else like that, and to keep pace with everybody else in and around the Premier League, then so be it. But I'd hate to see a move from the Gallagher.
Jack Sparrow says, thanks for your answers, guys. Mine was the contrast between the first few How games and the way we delivered the final two performances. By far the best I've seen us play for a number of years. Thanks for sharing that, mate. Tom says, I'd like us to go for Sterling. I think he doesn't have a future at Man City. Probably be on the bench with Haaland's arrival. Yeah, Sterling's an interesting one. Again, I mean, you're talking a big money move, and I think that's beyond us at the moment. We can't offer European football. A guy's still got ambition, I think, despite winning virtually everything that he can in the game and coming very close with England. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the next step, isn't it? I think Newcastle would need to win a trophy or at least be in the mix for Europe before we could attract somebody like that, Ross.
Yeah. I think a few years down the line, hopefully Newcastle's in and around the top four and or European football, and you can kind of then set your sights on another level of player. But yeah, Sterling would certainly want European Champions League football at this stage in his career, and rightly so, because he's a top class player.
Yeah, I would like to see us go for Sterling, and I get where you're coming from, Tom. I just think, moving forward, I think ultimately that will be, something that, I think that's something that, when we get European football, we get Champions League football, we get close to that. I think that's something we can generally look at. England play tonight, Ross. Internationals. I've got to be honest, mate. I watched that the Hungary game. Jaded performance, I think, is the way to describe it. Do you think the players just want a bit of time off? And this new tournament is just drab. It's boring. It's not the European Championships, and it's not the World Cup. And of course, we should have been kicking off the World Cup this Friday, but of course, with it being in Qatar now, it's at the ludicrous time that it is. Do you think the players just aren't up for it because of it's just so unimportant? It's
a difficult one, I think, for the players. Some of them are definitely, they've had a long season and it's been an intense season for some of them. For others, it's the England games are a real kind of opportunity to force their way into the World Cup, into the World Cup reckoning into Gareth Southgate's squad. There's only 4 or 5 games now. England have only got 4 or 5 games now before the World Cup. They won't have much of a warm-up period before the World Cup. This is kind of it. These Nations League games and then the ones in September are kind of the last opportunities for someone like who was probably the man of the match, Jared Bowen, against Hungary. That's a real opportunity for him to stay clear. For others, you could see it was a little bit flat. I'm hoping, obviously, tonight against Germany, it might have a different feel to it. I'd really like to see Kieran Trippier get a run out. And for somebody like him, these games are probably quite important because he missed a big chunk of the second half of last season, when he was out for 3 months. So it might help him just to get a couple of games under his belt. Hungary was flat, but we've got Germany tonight, Italy on Saturday, and hopefully we'll see a better standard of performance and something a little bit more vibrant than what we saw at the weekend.
Yeah, England, Germany's, despite how poorly England played the other night, it's usually a good game. Let's see what happens tonight. Would love us to get Mohamed Simakan, incredible talent. Again, that's just a name I've never heard of the player.
No, it's a new one on me. I'll check him out. But we're going to be linked with so many players over the next month or 2 months, and it's exciting times. But there's going to be names flying in fast and furious.
He's a French professional footballer who plays as a defender for the Bundesliga club Leipzig. So he's looking at him. He's 22 years of age, French, obviously, and seems to have some decent stats. I'm just looking at he's got Champions League experience, Europa League experience. He played 28 games last season, scored 1 goal, and he's worth around about £15 million according to the latest stats. A relative youngster, young player, but again, like you say, we're going to get linked with a lot of these people, aren't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're going to be coming thick and fast. And like I said earlier on, Newcastle will have, they won't just have Sven Botman and Nathan Ake on their central defensive list. They'll have 6, 7, 8 players, and they'll try to keep the pot boiling on a lot of them in case one falls down. They can move on to another target, and that's just the way transfers work.
Jack Sparrow, 121. I've got it at the moment, and I'll keep that running count going until the transfer window closes, mate. So 121 players I've got at this moment in time, and believe you me, I've got people sending us the names each day. So
put a sweepstake on. You should put a sweepstake on how many it'll be once the window's closed. What'll be the final tally?
I think we'll have to, mate. It's it's a bit like guessing how many gobstoppers are in a jar, isn't it? It's almost impossible. A lot of people saying we should be going for Gabriel Jesus from Manchester City. David Little says I think we should at least try for him. Forget Tony. And Shane Mawson says the same. Sneaky bid for Jesus from City would be nice. Yeah, I mean it would be nice, but again, I think he's at that level where Newcastle. Yes, they can offer, a bright new future, but they can't offer European football. And I think those kind of players are certainly the ones who would be looking for at least, Champions League football and wanting that kind of move. So it's nice, it's dreamland at the minute, but at least we can chuck it into the mix now and be thinking about these things. And as time progresses, I'm sure those kind of things will happen at Newcastle. Ross, where can people find you, mate, and catch up with what you're up to, social media, etc.?
Yeah, so on Twitter, Ross Gregory 9 is the place I tend to loiter around the most, with little bits and bobs, and doing a little bit of work with a few of the Reach titles. We've got the Chronicle and the MEN and the Mirror and the Express and whatever. I do a few bits and bobs around with those. So yeah, if you want to catch us, I'm on Twitter at Ross Gregory 9.
Good stuff, mate. As always, great to spend a morning with you, and look forward to seeing you next week, mate. Take care.
Cheers, Steve. Take care, everyone. Cheers.